Come on, everybody. Now, the good news is I don't have to do the health and safety. So let's do a selfie instead. Come on, everyone. There you go. Now, we do actually have a lot going on social, and we've got a prize for the best one. So you need to beat my selfie if you're going to win that prize. So, thank you and welcome to the GX. We love this event. We spend a lot of time and effort making it the best possible event that we possibly can. But just before we start, whilst I don't have to do the health and safety, I do have some important announcements. Most importantly, there's your Wi-Fi. So if you haven't obviously already signed in, please do sign into the Wi-Fi. We've also got Slido. Now come on, you all love Slido. And if for no other reason, it gives you a good excuse to get your phone out and check it. So when we do ask you to lean into Slido with some of our external keynotes and Dave's session, just get your phone out and pretend you're asking a question, even if you're checking your mail. We've also got an opportunity for us to share this socially, so please do take a scan of the code and share your experience with us together. So, GX. GX is about coming together with experts, peers, great keynote speakers, and chewing the cud, gaining the wisdom of the crowd, and being good together. Now, this chap here, this clever chap, back in the 1920s, this chap Sir Francis Galton, he was at a country fair. And whilst he was there, he asked 700 people to guess the weight of the ox. And by way of a surprise, no one got it right. But here's the thing. When he added up all of the answers and he divided that by 700, the answer was exact. And he was like, how can that be? So he did it again, same answer. And he did it again, and the same answer. And that was the genesis of a theory called crowd wisdom. And we've tapped into crowd wisdom in the last two GXs. So the sticky notes, they're having a break this year, but ironically, they've left a lasting impression. By the way, when you see these codes, they'll actually get you access to an area where you can download all of the useful content that's going to accompany us today. And this is what the wisdom of the crowd, your good selves, have helped us to produce. And this underscores the value of us all coming together here at GX to co-create the future. But as I said, don't worry if you miss these codes here now. You'll have plenty of opportunities to actually scan them later, including the newly enlarged experience zone, which I'm sure a lot of you have already been to already. Please make sure you take every opportunity in the breaks to really get involved there. There's a lot for you to lean into and learn about. And it's bigger than better than ever. What you'll also notice as well, it's all been branded as per the Gamma Elements. So the Gamma Elements, which you can see here, we recently launched these to help customers lean into and better understand the full portfolio, including phones, of services to help you solve your business problems. So what have we got on deck today? Well, it's our usual mix of great keynotes, panels, and engaging presentations. And we can see up here what we've got for you. We're going to help you cut through the noise and find that signal. Because we've all become a bit technology obsessed, which has created a tendency for us to focus on the shiny things. When we speak to new customers, they say they struggle to maximize the value of technology. which means it's hard getting to these value-based outcomes that we know you're all solving for. Reducing total operating costs, driving top-line growth, reducing customer churn, and delivering that epic CX to customers, whilst also heading off business risk and assuring talent is engaged and working collaboratively. These are the problems that we help you solve for. Your outcomes are solutions. We'll kick off shortly with a great panel debate. A bigger debate than what you're going to see over the road there in Westminster, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic as we've got a series of leaders that are going to lean into leadership, technology, and digital democratization. And I'll come back to that shortly. David is then going to come up and give us the strategy update. And of course, for those that have been to GX before, you will know that he'll have an exciting announcement for us for 24. Managing tech giants is a problem we all have. Like you, we have to partner with large tech giants, hyperscalers. Our job is slightly different, but we're always obsessed, and we always look to make sure our customers get the most amount of value from the investments and relationships we have in that area. We have in previous GXs heard a lot from Amazon and Microsoft. And today, we switch gears. We focus on our deepening relationship with Cisco. SASE, cyber, SD-WAN, LAN, Wi-Fi, UCaaS, CCaaS, to name a few. It's a broad portfolio. And we will help you pressure test that full portfolio against the business problems that we know you're solving for. We're going to hear today from Chris and Richard from Gamma and Joachim from Cisco on how Gamma is deepening its relationship with Cisco and what it means for you. Then, a real treat as we enter the fast world, fast-paced area of motorsport. We're joined by Bernie Collins of F1 Strategy and Formula One Sky fame. She's actually just written a book, How to Win a Grand Prix, and she's going to be unpacking key insights of her life in the fast lane, focusing on strategy, winning, data and trust. A winning combination for sure. But I can tell you now that the transferability of what she's going to say today into IT and business is profound, where a blend of people, data, and technology wins the day. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? After this, we have our own pit stop, and we're going to break for lunch in the experience zone. As I said, there's so much to learn from and lean into there, but please make sure you also visit the Good Together wall and the dog, as you can probably see as you move in there, for a great crowd collaboration experience. After lunch, we've got a golden surprise for you. I won't say any more than that, but we've got something exciting to start the afternoon with. And then we're going to delve into the depths of cyber. Richard's going to give us an update on all things Gamma Secure. And he's joined by Gamma's own Group Security Director, Amy, who will unpack how she's added a human touch to security services and created a winning cyber culture. Then we have the Institute of Customer Services joining us. Now, they're going to expand what they are seeing in the market space as the keys to success here, and we'll also be explaining how we're evolving our own CX, which you'll all be benefiting from over time. And then rounding us off before the final keynote, we talk you through the evolution of your managed networking proposition through the lens of people, process, and technology. We will share how our investments in these areas are driving value for you beyond traditional managed networks. And then we're going to close the day out with renowned TED talker Margaret Heffernan. And she has a great talk on leadership, culture, and decision-making. Now, I'm reliably informed I've got more slides here on her than she's got in her whole presentation. Yes, she doesn't have any. But she's a true TED legend and a TED expert and a very, very engaging speaker for us to round the day off. So, why humanizing as an overarching theme, I hear you ask? Well, the simple answer is value, which has hopefully just come across. The value of humans, where technology is your teammate, not a thing. Human touch is necessity. And today you're going to hear about how us humans can make a real difference with technology, regardless of whether that's with AI or just leveraging good old-fashioned shiny tech. Now, I'm going to indulge this for a bit because I'm going to pick up on the AI debate for a moment. If we look at the recent World Economic Forum agenda from Davos, by way of a surprise, AI was a key theme. But here's some interesting and key takeaways from that meeting. 40% of employees, humans, globally are now exposed to AI, which actually rises to 60% in advanced economies. Now that's an impressive ramp, isn't it? In just a short period of time. Now Deloitte also unpacked some really interesting survey results at this meeting. And they said 33% of respondents said AI represented the biggest risk to creating a global crisis on a massive scale, second only to extreme weather at 66%. That's a bit scary. Finance jobs are most at risk from AI, with 66% of respondents saying they will be replaced and 26% saying they'll be augmented. But before you start thinking that your CFO is soon to become a bot, let's not forget IT is second, with 32%. I think it's my CFO's in the room. Whoops. IT was second with 32% and 44% respectively. That last stat is really interesting. Where are you? Because half of what you do is going to be augmented with AI. If we look at the World Economic Forum, which, let's face it, is the global barometer for where this conversation is just now, then there were 4 areas, as I said. AI in finance, which is not surprising, because if you think of the risk on a global scale from getting that wrong is clearly massive. Enabling AI in research and development, providing AI services to underserved populations, particularly the developing world, and finally the impact on jobs and productivity, which is of course the obvious one. Last year, I stood in front of you all and talked about how ChatGPT had captured our imagination of an AI-fueled future beyond humans. And I recommended some early responses to you. Some of you may remember the 3 strategy routes that I unpacked. A buy, build, and borrow approach to AI. I think we got that right on reflection. Gen AI at commodity levels, it will lead to bigger changes that will be more significant than the arrival of digital commerce. For the first time, companies will be able to create their own customers, custobots, and they will shop on behalf of people, organizations, and even for themselves. Now that's a mind bender. The AI narrative and content is now everywhere. If last year was the year of LLMs, large language models, then this year feels like the year we've just become exhausted with them. It's everywhere, isn't it? And we may just simply use them, or we may just move on to the next buzzy technology. We will clearly need to revisit that in the months ahead to see how that plays out. But with so much talk from multiple sources on AI, we didn't want this event to be too dominated by AI, but it will come up for sure. I'm clearly leaning into it lightly here, and we can't just ignore it. But AI, in my opinion, is just another tool. Half the people will reject it, and half the people will embrace it and make money out of it. Just now, the big question you need to ask yourself is not how do humans adapt to AI? No, the big question you need to ask is how does money-making change as a result of AI? I think those that grab it and understand it will be the ones that make money from it. And that's how AI will grow. It's just another technology. It's just another tool. But it's another tool in the belt of those who know how to make money. To give you a bit of an example, if you're a lawyer and you use AI to prepare for a case, you're going to have a well-prepared lawyer and a well-paid one at that. So it's really going to depend on where the money trail goes with AI as to how it evolves just now. And if you think about it, that alone is a North Star for those people that want to embrace it. Is AI taking away the best of us as humans, or is it augmenting us for the better? Only time will tell. But for now, let's focus on being the best that we can and use it as a teammate. Technology as a teammate. Okay, to our first session. The job of the CIO and their team members, you, our customers, has never been harder. The stakes have never been higher, but the opportunities to deliver value across all areas have never been so abundant. CIOs and their teams, you, have a career-defining opportunity to reach beyond your roles, to orchestrate the delivery of value-generating capabilities everywhere across the enterprise. To succeed, you're going to need to expand your leadership skills, no matter your role. You must invest in personal development. And for most CIOs in particular, you must embrace all leadership opportunities that come your way. Improve your business acumen and be ruthless on outcome-driven execution. Today, we're going to help you on that journey today because the pace of change is incredible, and it shows no sign of slowing. Real seismic change doesn't happen continuously or in front of us. No, disruptive changes, they're sneaky. They happen under the radar to start with, and boom! Everything that's gone before, it now seems old and wrong. We see this everywhere we look. Just to make you feel a bit old, hands up if you understand the correlation between these two things. Yeah, it does make you feel a bit old, doesn't it? We see this everywhere we look. Many areas have changed forever. Well, certainly for us old folk here today, we've witnessed some of the biggest changes we've ever seen in a generation. If you're in a business or a market that's ever experienced this, you know how painful it is. I remember being sat in my car waiting to see the IT director of Blockbuster when I first got the call to say, nah, he's not going to be able to see you today. Never did go back to see him because they shortly went bust. Now, an interesting fact for you here, I don't know if many people know this, but Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, actually proposed an acquisition deal to Blockbuster in 2000 for $50 million. And they dismissed it. Oh dear. Some may be dismissing this just now. Some may feel like we've still got decades to go until this is all gone. But change is coming super quick. Are you ready? Are you ahead of the game? Well, stop press. I've got an announcement for you. I don't know if you've seen the news today, but Openreach have just announced that the WLR withdrawal will be extended to the 31st of January 2027. And that's not even got a cheer. So we will, of course, be looking to unpack the detail. I think we all knew this was going to happen, didn't we? There was no way they were going to be able to switch all of that stuff off. But here's the thought for you. Don't be at the back of the queue. Be at the front of the queue. Because I can tell you now, even though the date's moved back, is going to be an absolute melee and a scramble to get that legacy infrastructure turned off and get you onto the modern stuff. Don't be at the back of the queue. Please check out the digital turn-on stand in the experience zone if you've got a question or you need some help here. Remember, the stakes are high, you must act now. Sometimes we have decades of change. Sometimes we have weeks where we see a decade's worth of change in its own right. Nothing is safe from the march of digital and now Gen AI. And it's easy to get very focused on change. When we spoke to you, as we researched today's GX, you said you were evolving your function and yourselves away from being overly focused on change. You're being ruthless in your focus on outcomes. Change is always there and you can't always solve for it, but you can be outcome obsessed, is what you said to us. You also said that this was being driven by many things. The CEO, no surprises, being the number one influencer here. And that was driving you to adapt quicker, to evolve yourselves, and the way you lead, and the way you get your teams to follow you. As one leader put it to me, a leader without followers is just someone out for a walk. I love that phrase. So don't focus on the change, focus on the outcome. So how are you shaping your future self? Our panel is going to jump into this shortly. But we must remember to contextualize and personalize our plans for the journey ahead. If we, for a moment, lean into some stats from Gartner's recent CEO survey, it helps to point some guiding lights in this respect that we can all lean into. By way of a surprise and no change, the number one priority for the CEO is growth. What's interesting in this graph is actually the movements and the narrative that you can see on all of the different areas. Customer engagement, if you look in the middle, is massively, massively on the move. But think about it for a minute. How are you going to grow a business if you don't have customers that are engaged? It really brings into sharp focus the need and necessity for you to deliver epic CX to your customers. If we switch to the right of this graph, again, we see some interesting facts and figures. We actually see that efficiency and productivity is number 10. Now, that's what AI is mainly solving for just now. I'll let you reflect and ponder on that for a little bit. So, if we move forward, cautious steps ahead is the key message. And I also want to make a call out here to the fact that we need to actually assure our security defenses, which is becoming increasingly harder as the perimeters become increasingly more porous. We are dealing with a fluid cyber edge where users and devices, they just won't sit still. It's hard work. Talent continues to bite. And we see this more and more as our customers, as you, are evolving your asks. You are looking more and more for value-based managed services to solve this talent issue. And I want to give also a special shout out here to our managed SOC team, which you'll find upstairs in the experience zone, because they've got a twofer for you. Yeah, they're going to solve your risk and your talent challenges. So be sure to visit them and find out how they can do that for you. So after a dip, digital's back on the rise. And I've said this a few years now, and I'm going to come back to this point again because it's so, so important. I know it's certainly an area that we're doubling down in here. Data is key. You're not going to be successful with your digital projects. You're not going to be successful with AI unless you get your data sorted out. It needs to be clean. It needs to be orderly if you want to get the benefits. Again, I've recently spoken to several tech leaders in this respect when we were having a chat over lunch. And what was really interesting, what they were saying to me, is they were taking a very unusual approach to this. They were actually using AI to focus on their unstructured data, not their structured data, as a means and a way of actually sorting out their unstructured data. And I think there's something you may want to lean into there, because it's a really great way to do two things at once. Sort your data and leverage AI. To conclude, I find this really interesting as it frames the potential and feeds into that number one priority that the CEO's got of growth. If you also scan down, you can see the reflection, the other side of the coin of clearly what is top of mind in the boardroom at the moment. And that is how another company could disrupt your company by leveraging AI. So you need to flip and you need to look at both sides of those. Now, for me, AI, it sits in two camps at the highest level. You've got everyday AI that will solve for productivity and efficiency, and then you've got game-changing AI that will frankly disrupt companies and whole market segments, and that's where the growth sits. To help you, as I always like to do, here are some simple tasks that you can just go away and do. Think about the top critical capabilities that your business needs to deliver on its strategy, and then brainstorm how AI could have the biggest impact on those capabilities. It's a simple exercise, but I know many of you are already engaged in this sort of work, and it really is where you need to be if you're not already. So to summarize, if there are two things, and another twofer for you, that you really need to be doubling down and focusing on just now, get those foundations right. Get the right foundations for the post-crisis business strategy that you need to be successful. And once you've done that, frame the AI future that your ExCo can bravely bet on. So that's it from me just now. It's time to get our panel up. And as we ask them to join the stage, please could you put your hands together for our panel, and I will see you very soon.
Good morning, GX. What a pleasure to be in Westminster this morning and to borrow Alex's phrase, chew the cud, which I quite enjoy. Take a seat, Ian.
Thank you.
Yes, fantastic to join you all and to be on stage with some excellent tech leaders, CIOs, CTOs, with what we had back there, a lovely contextual piece from Alex on not just the role of the CIO, of course, but the complexity, the increasing complexity of what it means and looks like to be in this digital business and industry. And the CIO really is at the heart of that complexity. Now, we had brief introductions on the screen behind us, but to introduce them more fully, Ian Golding of APEM Group, an environmental services group, Ian Cohen of Acacium Group, a global digital healthcare services provider, Colin of Gamma, which probably needs no introduction, and Paul Kobe of Persimmon, the British householder group. Now, before I jump into the panel and questions, I have given them, or served them, a bit of a disservice. I can think of few other people in the country at the moment who can talk about the role of the CIO as these gentlemen here can. Between them, they've been CIOs, tech leaders of a host of globally recognized brands. The Natural History Museum, the RNLI for Ian, Associated Newspapers, the Financial Times, Addison Lee for Ian Cohen, Colin, BT and Openreach across multiple business units, and Paul Kobe, British Airways, John Lewis, to name a few. So very, very privileged to be on stage with you. Alex mentioned in particular the skills necessary for the CIO and for members of the audience who are looking to become CIOs and of course working with them too, that importance of maximising the potential of those individuals and of the CIO. So let's start with skills then. Ian, I'll come to you first given you're right next to me. Mm-hmm. What is this one skill that a CIO needs to succeed and how have you yourself honed that?
Good question, particularly in recent years. Given all the changes, I would say we probably had to become innovation officers of some kind. And the reason I say that is because we have to draw on so many new and emerging technologies and make so many things work across our organizations, build value streams across what might be very traditionally run organizations that doesn't really work anymore, and finding the kind of the North Star or the new products or new services that are basically created from the rich tapestry of all the different services and solutions that underlie all of those things.
Interestingly, also Ian is interim CIO, so well known for jumping in, jumping out, parachuting in, parachuting out. Does that interim nature of the CIO role change the skills that you need to employ?
It's been very interesting for me, because my first interim role that you mentioned was the RNLI, and they have a very, very clear purpose of, I'm sure you all know, preventing people from drowning, saving lives. So when you have a very, very clear North Star, you have a very singular focus on what it is you want to do, where you want to spend your money, and the sort of outcomes you want, and using data in the way that Alex was describing. So over many interim roles, I've been sent in usually with one or two straightforward tech-type problems to solve, but actually what the organisation really wants to use is tech in a particular way, in a digital world, to be able to transform what they do over time. So it's actually been a bit of a gift for me to be able to be very curious and to probably stir the pot quite significantly, help those organisations change away from the traditional structures that they've had.
Excellent. And you've used a great word there, curiosity.
Yeah.
Being curious seems to be the one big skill that every exec needs, let alone CIO. Ian, yourself.
So I think, first of all, I think it's a great question to ask. And the thing that always strikes me is CIO is a business technology leadership role. And very often we focus on the business alignment bit or the technology bit. The most important part is the leadership part for me. And I think there is a common characteristic in every leadership role that is a characteristic of the CIO role, which is this idea of bringing simplicity to an area of complexity. Every leader out there, whether they're an extrovert leader or whether they're an introvert or whatever kind of leader they are, invariably take a complex situation and make it simple. If you're a general in warfare, if you're a technologist in technology, by the way, technology can often be like warfare. So I think this idea of taking something complicated and making it simple so that people can follow you, because to the comment earlier, a leader is nothing without their followers, is super, super important to the CIO. And it's never been more important than it is now, with all of the complexity in the technology landscape, all of the things that your CEOs and your business colleagues are talking about. Unpacking that complexity and making it simple is the number one skill for the CIO, I would say.
Interesting. And interestingly, also, Ian, your CIO position has evolved somewhat to include AI, generative AI, as part of the formal responsibility, which I can think of no better thing to simplify as a complexity.
So, yes, is the answer. I kind of have responsibility for M&A and AI in the role that I hold. But if you want to ask me why I hold that role because I put my arms around it. I decided it was so important to the business and so important to the company that I operate in. Why would I want anybody else to lead on that topic? And I think, we'll talk about roles and structures and whatever. There will be chief AI officers out there. They will last slightly less than the chief digital officer, I would suggest, maybe. But the question is, why would you, if you are an aspiring technology leader and you want to grasp the things that are going to fundamentally change your business, why wouldn't you be throwing your hat in the ring to the AI agenda?
Interesting. Thanks, Ian. Colin, we'll come to you next.
I would say what I think about is really business acumen and understanding. And what I mean by that is many technologists move up in CIO roles because of their technology expertise. But actually, to be successful, it's about understanding the business. And quite often what I find is that many technology-related projects go wrong because the technology teams don't understand the business, or the business teams don't understand technology. It's like two different languages being spoken. And if as a CIO, you can really invest time in understanding the business problems and helping colleagues in the business to understand the challenges of technology, and technologists understand the challenges of the business. If you can get those people working together, break down that language barrier, then you can be hugely successful. So I invest as much of my time as possible out there in the business, using all the solutions, meeting lots of customers. Delighted to meet lots of customers today, because if I can understand that and help my brilliant technology team understand that as well, we will build better solutions.
Excellent. So you've got a bit of communication, comprehension, innovation and curiosity. Paul, close off this first question. What's your main skill that a successful CIO exhibits, and how have you honed it?
Well, I think it's being a conductor. And this came to me, after really enjoying that Leonard Bernstein film Maestro, with some fantastic performances, and then listening, to those performances. So I think leading IT function is as scary as leading an orchestra, because, you've got timpani, you've got strings, you've got woodwind over there in different parts of the orchestra, and we've got networks, and we've got delivery, and we've got maintenance, and we've got the GAI guys and the data guys. It's about conducting all of that. I think it's also, if you're in orchestra performance, you've got soloists, some of whom may or may not be temperamental, but they are key to the overall performance. And you've also got a score, so that's probably your ERP or your HR system or your cloud platforms. And that's a kind of given. But if you think about it, the way the conductor brings all of those elements together, way they deliver that score, whether Beethoven 9 can be delivered fantastically well when all the bits come together, and the soloists are there, and the whole orchestra is playing in time and in sync, and it can be a right awful mess and discordant and terrible. So it just came to me, Peter, that it is a bit like trying to conduct an orchestra and how you bring it together, and that's the kind of metaphor that I really like in terms of how you cope with all these changes.
I think it's a brilliant segue into the main meat of the panel, really, which is exactly what the CIO exhibits and how you could curate your optimal team and that structure. And let's take that metaphor of the conductor. I love that, Paul. Thank you very much. And open up to the panel now about how you yourselves have created those optimal team structures based on the skills you exhibit and the skills you're looking for.
Phrase digital discord springs to mind. So what we want to avoid when people are maybe singing or playing their piece, but not at the right time or not in the right context. So how does that happen? I mean, I think it doesn't happen very readily in the very, very traditional organisation structures that we've seen. I mean, I think of an extreme example where you have an HR and a finance and a technology and something or other business partner, and so you have teams flanked by so many people to apparently sort of bring all these ingredients together. That doesn't really work. You just end up with a bloated organisation. But I mean, we've worked in a PE organisation back many times, and they tend to be very good at finding the North Star, because it's about finding the value for something in a relatively short time frame. I think that really, really focuses people on what a product or a service is, and the more people can coalesce around something, a value stream or a product, something that's very clearly defined, I think that can be incredibly helpful. So for me, in an interim role, I'll often go in an organisation, inquire, well, where's my budget for all these grand plans that we'd like to come up with? And I kind of realised that my best response to that after one or two blank looks is to say, well, then I assume that the whole of the organisation and all of the budgets across all of the teams are within reach. It's just a question of finding good ideas, getting people behind those good ideas. They may be smaller or bigger ideas, but getting a coalition of people. And actually, I literally don't look at organisation charts these days. It does matter that people know which teams they're in, and they know when they're going to work and how they're managed. And the foundational sort of, let's say, waterfall or stable infrastructure is really important too. But on top of that, it's actually about creating something that everyone can get behind, or the right groups of people can get behind. And I kind of think then organisation models kind of fall away to be secondary to what it is that people are trying to achieve at some point.
I mean, I've had all sorts of different sorts of organisations and made some bad mistakes in having too many direct reports and setting up things that follow fashion. So I've reverted to keeping it very simple in terms of let's have a design, a build, and an operate function. And whether that's in the cloud or whether that's in-house, whether that's using brand new technologies or managing legacy technologies, I've found that the organizations understands that, and most importantly, the business kind of gets that. And you can then play the tunes on that.
I agree 100%. I am frustrated when I see organisations, for all the right reasons, building and publicising technology teams inside their organisational structures. Because ultimately, the people you are working with, your business colleagues, the customers you serve, whoever, they actually don't really care about the structure. The structure is of no interest to them whatsoever.
Yeah, spot on.
They want to know where to go to get something done. If I've got a good idea, where do I go? If I want to fix something, where do I go? If it's broken, what do I do? If I want to build something, where do I go? So having a simple approach to your organisation, my organisations have always been actually very similar to Paul's. I tend to go with 4 things. Somewhere to go where you work out the direction of stuff. Am I doing the right thing? Am I aligned? Some people call it architecture, some people call it design. A place to go where I manage stuff, services, projects, programs, products. A place where I build stuff, where I execute a place where stuff gets delivered. And that's simple. You can have conversations with your colleagues about this is where you go to solve your problems. They don't want to hear a debate between the application development team and the platform development team and the delivery services team about who got it wrong or whose fault it is. No interest whatsoever. So make the structure simple and seamless for the type of engagement you want inside your company, I would suggest.
I think that's really interesting. It's also interesting, ask 4 CXOs and you get 4 different answers. The thing I would reflect on is what I find incredibly important is to bring technology close to the business. And there's 2 mechanisms that I use to do that. Whatever your structure, I always ask my direct reports to dual report and act as the CIO for a particular part of the business, so that they grow those skills, learn about that business, and they wake up every morning not worrying about their tech team, but also worrying about the business that they're serving. So bring technology closer to the business. And also then when it comes to actually building solutions, the question I always ask, I ask both technology and business colleagues, have you used it? Have you seen it? If you're building a website, can you just log on and show me? And really making sure that people aren't just using slides and talking about stuff, but they're actually close to the solutions and really in the detail and talking to each other about it.
Have each of those strategies stood the test of time across your careers? Or of late, as we discussed previously, the complexity of the industry now, have you had to refine them in some way? And if so, how and why?
I mean, it's very much reverting to where I started from, for exactly the reasons that, Ian articulated so well. But I think the core point to build on it, which is you said, is, are you getting access into the business? Are you part of the business? You're the IT function of a business. That's the only and simple reason why you're there. So I always use as the acid test, am I and is my team getting invited to the customer strategy day, the operations strategy day, the finance strategy day? Because if they are, the business has got it. They're understanding that digital tech is fundamental to everything they do, and they're bringing people in, and you're part of that discussion.
And you've hit the nail on the head. Are you part of? Because for too many years, there's the IT function, there's the business function. We're IT, they're the business. And we've spoken for decades about IT and business alignment. And by definition, when you talk about alignment, you actually reinforce separation. You make things seem distant. So when you build organizations and you design organizations, you're designing for the business. You are the business. So it's inconceivable that the people who are building things in a vacuum. They're building them with their business colleagues. So if I've seen one tweak to organisational design, it's definitely about this engagement and being closer to the edge of the network. And it's also very much about partnering, not business partnering in the HR sense, but partnering sitting next to the person you are working with, deep understanding of the outcome you're trying to achieve. That's tweaked the model.
Would you call that a sort of democratization of the digital output or delivery of the teams, or are we thinking about something else?
Possibly, but you know how much I hate the word democratisation. I don't think it's about... We can get hung up on terms, you know. I like to talk about design, so I'll give you an example. I like to talk about design rather than architecture, and I don't have architectural teams. The reason is architecture comes across to certain people as slightly sterile, a bit blueprint, a bit techie. Design comes across as a conversation. I'd like that wall blue. Can I have my car? Part of our job is to facilitate the conversations that will drive the outcomes. And the fastest way to do that is to change the vocabulary. So you get closer to people and you have conversations. You don't talk about frameworks. You talk about outcomes. You don't talk about process maps. You talk about designs. If you change that, and that's not changing structure, that's just tweaking the narrative inside your structure.
I want to come now to the skills then for the audience. So we've discussed that structural piece. We've had some lovely anecdotes. What then does that mean for the teams you're curating, whether they are siloed or not, depending on your outcomes? Ian, why don't you take that one?
Well, so I think we're now really talking about how people work together much better across the organisation. By the way, a nice silver lining side effect to what you're describing, Ian, is that we don't hear so much about shadow IT when people are actually working more together, because it just becomes evident what people should or shouldn't do. I see a lot of tech or digital teams now actually working genuinely across the entire organisation, and sometimes actually that brings people that have brilliant product ideas or designs for future products much closer to the technology teams. I really, really like that we're moving away from this demarcation. We've talked for years about value streams, but with all the different component parts that we have to deal with, you can't have the cyber and the architecture teams and all these different teams working their different camps, and then you have these sort of handoffs with 10 different teams. It's all really important. That all has to work together. I think we're actually bringing people together to work much more closely away from this demarcation we've seen.
And I think, Peter, one of the things that has changed over my time as being a CIO in different businesses is that both the understanding of the business in how to use technology is much, much better. So modern executives need to know about technology, and they do, and they have views on it. It's no longer the preserve of the experts, which was always a bad idea. I think also the tools, the fact that it sort of started with rules-based engines in terms of software. We've now got Power BI, which puts enormous power and has been absolutely transformational for my existing business in terms of just understanding and using data. So you don't need interpreters to do that. Generative AI, the way Copilot is being used, the way other sorts of tools are putting this enormous amount of power and ability in the hands of our colleagues. And I think that's something that, we've got to go with and manage, because if you don't, you're holding your business back. But I think that's a real qualitative change from, the IT looked after this and you can't touch it because it's our IT. It's not, we all know it's not like that now. You've got to enable the business.
Yeah. I think the skill that I look for today are the people that can find the sweet spot between a perfect architecture, solving a business problem, the money available and the time available. And you have to find the sweet spot. What is the most that you can do to enable the business within the budget set by the CFO, with the technology constraints that you have, and not be too purist about your architecture. And what I find is, when I find the people that can do that, they are the real golden nuggets that help you unlock a technology strategy.
Yeah, but interestingly, we saw that bar chart in Alex's opening segment around the different priorities that CEOs have. And it did strike me that there were a couple that were perhaps surprising. You know, not the growth per se, but certainly the delivery of product and efficiency, perhaps, which as a CIO, one of your main responsibilities, in your point, is simplifying the complex. How do you translate what the demands of the CEO is at the moment with the teams that you have and what you're able to do with them?
I think that, I mean, there is no substitute for a great relationship with your CEO. And I mean, I've been super fortunate to work with some amazing CEOs in my career. But if you can build that relationship there are certain relationships as a CIO that people tend to think, oh, well, I'll do this. I'm going to go and work across the COO network because that's where my stakeholder community lives. Or I'm going to focus on the CFO because that's where my budget lives. The sad reality of life is you have to focus on all of them.
Yes.
You know, you have to be, you know, that trusted voice in all of those conversations. And you have to build teams that have the ability to execute on that trust. Because to your point, one of the measures I have for my leadership team is when executives stop calling me, because I do very little. I know very little as well. My teams know way more than I do. They are populated by experts in their field. When the stakeholder community, when my colleagues, when my business colleagues are calling members of my team asking questions and have the same depth of relationship that I have, then you know that that talent, structure, engagement piece is working properly.
And the best way to do that is go and ask them.
Yeah.
And actually talk to them. And there will be different things. And, you know, you build trust in different ways. So, you know, it may be, a new HR, platform or improving that. Or it may just, please can you make my flipping iPad work properly, guys? The current job, one of our big pain points is connectivity at 250 building sites, construction sites around the country, which are in difficult to access sort of places. Gamma pricking their ears up at this point, I'm sure. But, fixing that was unlocked, as Ian said, trust. And then when you've got that, then it's about building on that. What do you need next? How do we use this once you've proved that? But that's going to be different with different people. And as you said, the leadership team is fundamental to that.
It's interesting hearing those two answers, because what I often find is that the CEO is completely clear what they want. The complexity isn't there. The complexity is that your peers around the leadership team have all heard a different thing. Yeah. And actually what you have to do is go back to, well, what are we actually trying to get to? And understanding where are the disconnects that mean people have taken a different perspective on what the clear direction has been. So I think joining things up and holding on to that clear direction is really important as well.
There's no substitute, as Paul said, for understanding, what it is that you're actually doing, like at grassroots, what's actually going on out in the field, and that's a great way of building relationships with, perhaps a bit ground up with those other executive peers. And of course, the chief exec relationship is a very important one, because while they can't get into the noise and detail of everyone's directed, if we call it that, they do corral the exec team around something, and they probably have a very clear idea of exactly where they want to go, and they may be thinking about different things, investor share prices, all sorts of different things for 3 years in the future. So yeah, I mean, it's how it all comes together as the exec team and the cohesive vision, isn't it?
I wonder if you've given any thought to what you'd be doing or thinking about or prioritising if you were not in the positions you are today. You are perhaps 2, 3, 4 levels below, and thinking about what it takes to become the next CIO in an increasingly democratized word, sorry to use the word, Ian, but digital word, AI-focused and the like. Would you do anything particularly different? I'm just thinking about what the audience can take from you in terms of what they should think about from this afternoon onwards.
I find that question incredibly difficult because I think the routes that people take are people specific. The route that I took isn't going to be the route that everybody else takes. The thing that still lives with me now, and we've mentioned the word, and it was there when I was a systems programmer, it was there when I was a project manager, it was there when I was doing product, before it was called product, is I'm slightly weird. I have this insane curiosity about stuff. And it's not just technology stuff, it's all kinds. I'm curious about music, I'm curious about art. I don't see that I leave that curiosity at home. And so for me, it's that curiosity that continually asks me, well, what's next? And that, get immersed in whatever you are curious about. Be passionate about it, and that will give you the stepping stones you need.
I love that, and I would build on it very slightly, which is what I love, what I always encourage people to do. Is the question to ask of your boss is, how can I help? What other problem can I solve for you? And in that way, that curiosity, but also solving a business problem, what I find then is that that's always my advice to people. Ask how you can help and do more, and then do that, and good things happen.
Perhaps building on that, somebody once said that to me that, decide what you think your next role you want to be, and actually start being that. Start behaving like that, and help your boss in that way.
There is also no such thing as a generic type of, let's say, CIO in this context. And I've been fortunate to work with some brilliant tech leaders who have actually gone on, I think I've sort of played a bit of a role in mentoring them as then they've taken on their first CIO roles. And their skill sets have been absolutely completely different. And two organisations as a go, a sustainability client sustainability lifecycle expert became Anthesis's chief digital officer because he was so good at understanding what the net zero sustainability digital tools could be from a product management perspective. So he is that person, and I'm pretty sure all the people in this room that aspire to be in leadership roles will all have very different skills. So I think with an obsession with the outcomes is probably going to take people down a good path, whatever works for them.
Excellent. And just a final question for each of you before we close off the panel and allow the rest of the event to continue. We touched at the beginning the skills you think are core for a successful CIO. Are there any skills that each of you do not have that you're looking to acquire, either this year or in the near future, and why?
Understanding the next new technology. But it goes to the point that several of you call it, it's about being curious. It's always being excited about digital tech, because it is constantly changing, unlike some other professions, where, they're pretty static. It's so exciting because you don't know what the next challenge is, so being open to that's really important.
Yeah, I would echo that. I'm a huge geek. I spend so much time playing with future technologies, looking to understand them, and I think that's super important as a CIO or a CTO. You've got to be learning all of the time about what might come next.
Yeah, 100% agree. It used to be, learn the language of the business, don't speak about technology. The way you get on in the boardroom is the language of the business. Now, the geeks are on the rise. It is cool to know tech. Doesn't mean you don't know business, it's cool to know business as well, but you don't push the tech to the background anymore. Or, it can live in the foreground.
Nothing really to add other than I think it could be incredibly exhausting because everything is changing more quickly than ever before, but actually because of the roles and the position that we are all in, and with our combined curiosity, it's actually an exhilarating time to be on the front foot for everything that's evolving now.
Fantastic. Well, I've written down 4 C's: communication, comprehension, curiosity, and conducting, which is, I wasn't expecting to write that one down for, but I think that's, and it's sort of with 4 speakers on the panel, I think that echoes and reflects quite nicely, not just the amount of stuff that you will have to do, but actually when you simplify and boil it down into its constituent parts, it really can be as simple as those 4 C's. But thank you very much for joining us at GX Summit.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.